Deep in the tangled jungles of Central America, before Wi-Fi, coffee shops, and reality TV existed, small farming communities were busy inventing civilization. Imagine families clearing patches of dense forest while sweating like marathon runners, planting corn, beans, and squash. The ultimate ancient combo meal. These crops weren't just food, they were destiny. Corn became the superstar of the diet, beans the reliable sidekick, and squash the funny cousin nobody talks about, but still invites to dinner. Together they laid the foundations of what would grow into the mighty Maya civilization. Birds squawked, monkeys threw fruit, sometimes accurately, sometimes not. And villagers in simple woven tunics hummed songs to the rhythm of their work. The jungle wasn't just a backdrop, it was both supermarket and pharmacy. Every leaf, vine, and creepy bug had a purpose, whether for cooking, healing, or freaking out your neighbor. It was a world alive with color, sound, and more humidity than a sauna. And from these modest beginnings with muddy feet and calloused hands, the seeds of one of the most dazzling civilizations in history were planted. Little did those farmers know, their cornfields would one day inspire legends, pyramids, and an entire cosmic calendar. After those first muddy cornfields sprouted, the Maya quickly realized farming wasn't just about planting seeds, it was about serious engineering. Picture hillsides that looked impossible to farm, yet they carved them into giant staircases, not for a dance party, but for growing food. These terraced fields were the ancient equivalent of Wi-Fi routers. They kept the whole community connected and fed. Water was carefully directed through canals, making every drop count like a thrifty grandma. Corn, beans, and squash didn't just survive, they thrived on these green steppes. Farmers wore simple cotton tunics, wiping sweat off their brows while proudly showing off their perfectly aligned rows like kids lining up action figures. It wasn't glamorous, but it was genius. Thanks to this clever system, villages grew, bellies stayed full, and nobody had to eat roasted iguana 3 times a day, unless they wanted to. Farming became not just survival, but a kind of art, equal parts sweat, science, and stubborn determination. From those carefully stacked terraces, the Maya were literally building their future, one step at a time, proving that food and architecture could be best friends long before Instagram brunch photos made it cool. With food flowing from the terraces and cornfields, the Maya had the luxury of thinking, why not settle down and build something permanent? And so the first villages were born, not exactly skyscrapers, but cozy clusters of houses made from wood, stone, and thatch. Families gathered around fire pits, gossiping about whose maize looked the plumpest, while kids darted between huts playing tag with dogs that acted more like mischievous siblings. Life revolved around family ties. Grandmothers telling stories that sounded suspiciously like warnings, uncles showing off their hunting skills, and sometimes coming back empty-handed, and neighbors dropping by as casually as if walls didn't exist. The community wasn't just about survival, it was a stage for social life, where cooperation was the ultimate currency. If one family built a roof, everyone pitched in, partly out of solidarity, partly because borrowing your neighbor's ladder was easier than making your own. Slowly, these clusters grew into organized villages, with paths connecting homes, shared spaces for rituals, and a rhythm of life that blended work with laughter. What started as scattered huts became the blueprint of a civilization, teamwork, chatter, and a whole lot of maize on the menu. As villages grew busier with chatter and corn tortillas, the Maya began looking to the skies for answers. They noticed the sun, the moon, and the stars weren't just decoration. They were giant cosmic clocks. When the sun blazed too hot, they prayed for rain. When thunder rolled, they imagined gods tossing coconuts at each other in the clouds. Farmers didn't just plant seeds, they planted prayers too, hoping Chak, the rain god, wouldn't take a vacation. Rituals became community events. Families gathered around fires, offering food, blood, and sometimes a chicken that clearly didn't volunteer. Priests in dramatic feathered headdresses waved incense, looking both wise and slightly dizzy from all the smoke. Everyone believed the seasons were more than weather. They were moods of the gods, shifting like teenagers. This faith tied people to nature so tightly that even harvesting corn felt like part of a cosmic deal. Humans feed the gods. Gods feed the humans. It was a spiritual barter system where everyone hoped they were getting the better end of the trade. And so, beneath the jungle canopy, everyday life wasn't just farming or gossip. It was a sacred performance, with gods as the VIP audience. With farms thriving, villages buzzing, and gods officially booked as VIP guests at every ritual, the Maya were unknowingly setting the stage for something far bigger. What started as family huts and cornfields began to look suspiciously like the first draft of a civilization blueprint. Cooperation turned into organization, rituals turned into institutions, and those farmers with muddy feet were now pioneers laying down the foundations of kingdoms. The barter system of you help me with my roof, I share my tamales slowly evolved into political authority, where certain families rose as leaders, not just because they had bigger huts, but because they convinced everyone the gods had them on speed dial. The laughter around fires and teamwork in the fields gradually grew into something serious: alliances, traditions, and power structures. And while no one could imagine towering pyramids yet, the seeds were already there, waiting for generations to water them with sweat, faith, and the occasional blood sacrifice. These humble beginnings weren't just survival tricks. They were the prologue to an empire that would one day awe the world. In short, corn wasn't just dinner, it was destiny, and the Maya were about to write history with every harvest. After villages sprouted like mushrooms in the jungle, the Maya decided to level up. Why settle for a village when you can have a city-state? These weren't just oversized villages. They were the beating hearts of politics, religion, and economics. Imagine bustling plazas where merchants hawked cacao beans like they were golden bitcoins, priests chanting so loudly you wondered if the gods ever asked for earplugs, and rulers strutting around as if their feathered capes were the latest fashion trend. Each city-state was like its own brand, complete with logos, inscriptions, mascots, gods, and endless PR campaigns carved into stone stelae. Life revolved around these centers. Farmers brought food, artisans brought crafts, warriors brought muscle, and priests brought smoke. Lots of smoke. To outsiders, they might have looked like chaotic anthills. But to the Maya, these were carefully orchestrated hubs where power, faith, and trade collided in daily fireworks. And just like modern cities, they competed for influence, each one convinced it was the ultimate center of the universe. In truth, these city-states were the stage on which Maya history would be written. Loud, colorful, and occasionally a bit smoky. If city-states were the stars of the Maya world, then some shone brighter than others. Take Tikal, the skyscraper of the jungle, with temples so tall you'd think the trees were jealous. Then there was Calakmul, Tikal's eternal frenemy, always trying to outdo it in wars, alliances, and who had the fancier feather capes. Copan, on the other hand, was the art geek, famous for its mind-blowing sculptures and stelae that looked like ancient comic strips. And let's not forget Palenque, the stylish diva of the bunch, boasting elegant palaces and an architectural flair that screamed, "Look at me, I'm fabulous." Each of these city-states had its own personality. Tikal was the tough guy, Calakmul the rival, Copan the artist, and Palenque the drama queen. Together they created a political soap opera with plots thicker than tamale dough. People traded, fought, made peace, and broke it again faster than you could roast a cacao bean. These weren't just cities, they were celebrity hotspots of the ancient world, constantly trying to upstage each other while writing history in stone. And honestly, the drama made life anything but boring. Behind every glamorous city-state stood a king, the Ajah part politician, part priest, and part motivational speaker, who took his job very seriously and very theatrically. Picture him striding through the plaza in a feathered headdress taller than a basketball hoop, while everyone whispered, "Wow, that must be uncomfortable on windy days." The Ajah wasn't just there to pose. He made sure taxes were collected, sometimes in cacao beans, sometimes in labor. Wars were fought at the right time, and the gods got their regular offerings so they didn't throw cosmic tantrums. He was the glue holding society together, the guy who could bless a harvest in the morning, lead warriors at noon, and host a blood sacrifice ceremony by evening. People saw him as both king and divine hotline operator, the middleman who could call up the gods for weather updates. But with great power came great stress, especially when neighboring city-states kept starting drama. Still, the Ajah thrived on ceremony, spectacle, and the belief that as long as he looked fabulous and kept the corn coming, the universe would stay in balance. If you thought Maya kings spent all day just looking fabulous in their feathered headdresses, think again. The real entertainment was their constant political drama. City-states weren't isolated. They were like relatives at a never-ending family reunion, sometimes hugging, sometimes throwing tamales at each other. One week, Tikal and Calakmul might seal an alliance with a royal marriage, smiling for the ancient equivalent of wedding selfies carved in stone. The next week, they'd be at war, soldiers painting their faces, yelling battle cries, and probably regretting skipping leg day. Alliances were as fickle as the weather. Today's best friend could be tomorrow's sworn enemy, and vice versa. Ambassadors scurried between cities carrying gifts of cacao and jade, desperately trying to prevent kings from turning a minor insult into a full-scale war. Meanwhile, ordinary farmers probably sighed, wondering why their rulers couldn't just settle things with a ball game instead of armies. These tangled webs of alliances and rivalries weren't just chaos. They were the fuel that kept the Maya world dynamic, noisy, and never short of drama. Honestly, if Netflix existed back then, the Maya political soap opera would have been a top hit. Of course, the Maya world wasn't run by kings alone. Behind the Ajah stood a whole supporting cast worthy of their own reality show. The nobles strutted around like VIP guests, dripping in jade jewelry, making sure everyone noticed their fancy headdresses. Priests were the dramatic directors, waving incense burners and insisting the gods needed yet another blood sacrifice, preferably someone else's. Then came the warriors, the muscle of the city-state, strutting with painted faces and feathered shields, as if auditioning for the role of most intimidating. Each group had its own job, but also its own ego. Nobles threw parties to show off, priests threw smoke to look mystical, and warriors threw spears to prove they were useful. Together, they kept the machinery of the city-state running, like cogs in a very noisy, very colorful engine. And while they all claimed to serve the gods and the people, let's be honest, half the time they were just competing for who looked the most important in the plaza. Still, this chaotic pyramid of power gave the Maya strength, structure, and plenty of gossip to keep life interesting. By now, the Maya weren't satisfied with villages, city-states, or even feather fashion shows. No, if you really wanted to impress the gods and your neighbors, you needed something tall, flashy, and impossible to ignore: the stepped pyramid. These weren't built just for looks. They were cosmic ladders connecting the earth below to the heavens above, with the added bonus of giving priests an excuse to climb a lot of stairs. Imagine being a farmer watching your local rulers order a giant stone mountain to be built and thinking, that's great, but can we also get a bigger corn storage? Every pyramid screamed power, from the Ajah's authority to the god's presence, carved in stone and stacked sky high. The staircases weren't just stairs, they were symbolic runways where rituals took place, with priests walking dramatically as if auditioning for the universe's top model. And every level of the pyramid was a reminder that life itself was ordered in steps: the underworld, the human realm, and the heavens. In short, these pyramids were part temple, part theater stage, part cosmic elevator. And if nothing else, they proved the Maya were masters at turning rocks into stories big enough to last forever. Now the real question: how on earth did the Maya build these colossal temples without wheels, iron tools, or even cranes? The answer: teamwork, muscle, and a whole lot of creative complaining. Picture teams of workers hauling massive stone blocks using ropes, wooden sledges, and pure determination, while one guy in the back mutters, "Wouldn't a wheel be nice?" Every stone was carved with stone tools, yes, stone cutting stone, and fitted so precisely that even modern builders would squint in disbelief. Supervisors stood nearby, feathered headdresses swaying, trying to look important while probably contributing nothing but motivational speeches. Priests, of course, claimed the gods demanded the temple, which was convenient since nobody could argue with divine blueprints. The entire process was slow, sweaty, and spectacular, like a centuries-long DIY project with no instruction manual. But the results? Temples that still stand today, defying time, weather, and countless tourists with selfie sticks. The Maya proved that who needs wheels when you've got ingenuity, faith, and a workforce that can turn sheer willpower into stone masterpieces. Among all the Maya cities, Chichen Itza was the superstar, and its celebrity landmark was none other than the Pyramid of Kukulkan. Think of it as the ultimate cosmic calendar disguised as a giant stone skyscraper. With 365 steps, one for every day of the year, it basically shouted, "We invented the stone version of Google Calendar." Twice a year during the equinox, the sun casts a shadow that looks like a giant serpent slithering down the staircase, as if the pyramid itself were pulling off a special effects show centuries before Hollywood. Pilgrims, merchants, and probably a few skeptics gathered to watch, gasping and whispering things like, "Did that snake just move?" Priests, of course, claimed full credit. "Yes, totally planned. Thank you very much." Beyond the theatrics, Chichen Itza was a hub of trade, politics, and rituals, buzzing with life like an ancient Times Square. But let's be honest, the real headliner was Kukulkan's pyramid. Part temple, part science project, part stage for a cosmic light show. Even today, it still stuns tourists, proving that the Maya not only knew their astronomy, but also how to keep an audience entertained. As if giant pyramids weren't impressive enough, the Maya also decided to build a cosmic observatory, El Caracol, a round tower that looked suspiciously like an ancient space station. From here, priests turned into stargazers, squinting at the night sky and jotting down notes with all the seriousness of NASA scientists, minus the telescopes. They tracked Venus like it was a celebrity, timing rituals and wars according to its appearances, as if saying, "Sorry, we can't invade today. Venus isn't in the right mood." The observatory's windows were perfectly aligned with celestial events, showing off Maya math and astronomy skills that made farmers wonder if their leaders were secretly magicians. Villagers probably looked up at the tower and thought, "So that's where the gods live, or at least where the nerds of the village hang out." El Caracol wasn't just a building. It was proof that the Maya weren't only farmers, warriors, or artists. They were also cosmic accountants, turning the sky into a giant calendar. And while most people were busy worrying about corn harvests, these sky watchers were busy predicting eclipses, proving that the Maya had their eyes set far beyond the jungle canopy. And if the pyramids and observatories weren't enough to drop jaws, the Maya doubled down with their art. Carvings and monuments so detailed that you half expect the stone figures to wink at you. Every wall, stela, and temple doorframe was like an ancient comic book, packed with gods, kings, battles, and enough drama to rival a modern soap opera. Warriors were etched mid-battle with poses so dramatic they looked ready to audition for an action movie. Priests were carved with elaborate robes and feather crowns, frozen forever mid-incantation, while ordinary folks occasionally sneaked into the art, looking suspiciously like background extras. Some carvings even depicted gruesome rituals with such precision you could almost hear villagers whisper, "Well, that escalated quickly." The mystery lies in the sheer amount of detail, chisels made of stone creating works finer than many metal tools could manage. Scholars today still scratch their heads. Were the Maya artists just extremely patient, or did they have secret techniques lost to time? Either way, the result's breathtaking. Stone monuments that speak, joke, and sometimes glare at you across the centuries, proving the Maya had humor and grandeur carved into their very bones. If you thought one or two gods were enough to handle the universe, the Maya would like to politely disagree. Their pantheon was a whole cosmic cast, each with their own quirks. At the top was Itzamna, the wise creator god, who basically ran the universe like a CEO with endless meetings. Then came Ixchel, goddess of the moon, childbirth, and medicine, a multitasker so overworked she'd put modern moms to shame. Chak, the rain god, was the drama king, stomping around with his lightning axe whenever he felt thirsty on behalf of the crops. And of course, Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, who slithered through myths and pyramids alike, the ultimate showstopper with scales and feathers to match. For the Maya, these gods weren't distant. They were part of daily life, blamed when it rained too much, praised when corn grew tall, and probably side-eyed when someone stubbed a toe. It was a divine soap opera where every deity had a starring role, and humans had to keep them happy with rituals, prayers, and the occasional chicken that definitely did not volunteer. In short, the Maya lived in a world where the divine was never boring, always colorful, and sometimes a little moody. For the Maya, the sky wasn't just pretty lights. It was a giant cosmic schedule, and missing it was like forgetting your mom's birthday. The sun, moon, and especially Venus were treated like VIP timekeepers, setting the rhythm for farming, rituals, and even wars. If Venus rose in the wrong spot, battles were postponed, because nobody wanted to fight when the universe was in a bad mood. Priests spent endless nights stargazing, scribbling in codices, and muttering things like, "Nope, can't plant corn today. Mercury is acting weird." Their calendars weren't just tools. They were sacred contracts with the gods, carefully aligning human life with cosmic cycles. Every solar eclipse, every equinox, every strange movement in the heavens was seen as a divine text message, and the Maya made sure to reply with ceremonies. For farmers, this meant planting wasn't guesswork. It was heavenly approved scheduling. And while today we rely on weather apps, the Maya had something better, a spiritual astronomy that combined science, faith, and just enough cosmic paranoia to keep everyone on their toes. For the Maya, religion wasn't just quiet prayers. It was a full-blown festival, equal parts party and, well, blood donation. Picture colorful parades with dancers in feathered costumes, drums beating so loudly that even the gods had to tap their feet. Incense smoke filled the air, mingling with the smell of roasted maize, while villagers cheered, sang, and probably argued over who wore the biggest headdress. But at the heart of these festivities was sacrifice. Blood was considered the ultimate Wi-Fi signal to connect with the gods. Kings and nobles would pierce their tongues or ears in dramatic fashion, while priests proclaimed, "The gods demand it." Chickens, and sometimes less fortunate captives, joined the ritual, ensuring the divine inbox stayed full. It might sound gruesome today, but for the Maya, it was as normal as paying taxes. Painful, yes, but necessary. These ceremonies bound the community together, reminding everyone that the gods had appetites, and it was best not to leave them hungry. Between the dancing, chanting, and bloodletting, Maya festivals were a wild mix of joy and dread, equal parts carnival and cosmic contract. If heaven was glamorous, the Maya also had a place for the dark side. Xibalba, the underworld. But don't picture it as just gloom and doom. Think of it more like a twisted game show hosted by scary gods. Legends describe Xibalba as a realm filled with traps. Houses of darkness, houses of bats, houses of knives. Basically, every horror movie set rolled into one. The lords of Xibalba were mischievous and cruel, challenging souls with bizarre tests that made you wonder if the gods had too much free time. One wrong move and you'd find yourself in a room of endless mosquitoes, which sounds like every camper's worst nightmare. Still, the Maya didn't see Xibalba only as punishment. It was part of the cosmic cycle, a place where life, death, and rebirth all mingled. People believed brave souls could outwit its dangers, turning terror into triumph. So while villagers prayed to Chak for rain or Ixchel for safe childbirth, they also lit incense, hoping the lords of Xibalba wouldn't prank them too hard. For the Maya, even the afterlife had drama, humor, and a dash of nightmare fuel. In the Maya world, priests weren't just spiritual guides. They were part-time astronomers, event planners, weather forecasters, and, let's be honest, professional smoke machines. Dressed in elaborate feathered headdresses and robes covered in sacred symbols, they strutted through plazas like divine celebrities. Their job was to interpret the gods' messages, which often meant staring at the stars all night and then declaring, "Yep, Time for another blood sacrifice. Villagers trusted them because who else could claim to have the gods on speed dial? They decided when to plant crops, when to wage wars, and when the community should gather for a festival, making them the ultimate schedulers of Maya society. And while some people might have rolled their eyes at the endless rituals, everyone knew better than to ignore them. Because if the priest said the gods were cranky, nobody wanted to risk being the cosmic punching bag. With chants, incense, and dramatic flair, priests held the delicate balance between humans and the divine, proving that in Maya society, a good connection with the heavens was just as important as a good harvest. In Maya daily life, corn wasn't just food. It was life itself, the golden VIP of every household. According to their myths, humans were literally made from maize dough, which probably explains why farmers treated every stalk like a family member. Fields stretched across the landscape, with men and women working side by side, planting, weeding, and joking that the gods clearly invented farming as a cosmic workout plan. Children tagged along, helping to shoo away birds, while secretly sneaking bites of roasted maize when no one was watching. Festivals celebrated the corn harvest with dances, songs, and offerings, all to make sure Chak kept the rain coming and didn't decide to binge-watch clouds instead. From tortillas to tamales, corn showed up at every meal, every ritual, every corner of Maya culture. Forget gold or jade. This humble grain was the true currency of survival. To the Maya, corn wasn't just a crop. It was the glue that held together their stomachs, their stories, and their sense of identity. In short, the Maya didn't just eat corn. They were corn, and they wore that proudly. If corn was the food of life, cacao was the fuel of the marketplace, the Maya version of both money and morning coffee. Step into a bustling plaza, and you'd see traders haggling over cacao beans like Wall Street brokers, except with more feathers and less paperwork. A pouch of cacao could buy you a rabbit, a woven cloth, or if you were feeling fancy, a shiny jade trinket. Of course, everyone had to resist the temptation of drinking their profits, because hot chocolate was considered a luxury drink worthy of nobles and warriors. Markets weren't just about trade. They were social hotspots where gossip traveled faster than the goods. Women in colorful dresses showed off woven textiles. Potters displayed clay vessels with dramatic flair, and merchants bragged that their cacao beans were definitely fresher than Tikal's. Even musicians joined in, drumming rhythms to lure customers to their stalls. For the Maya, shopping was never boring. It was part business, part carnival, and part caffeine economy. And while today we swipe credit cards, the Maya jingled their pouches of cacao, proving that money really does grow on trees. If the marketplace smelled like cacao, then Maya kitchens smelled like pure happiness. Their cuisine was a delicious mix of practicality and creativity, proving that even ancient people knew how to eat well. Tortillas were the daily MVP, flat, warm, and perfect for wrapping anything from beans to roasted turkey. Tamales, little corn dough packages steamed in leaves, were basically the lunchbox of the Maya world. Portable, tasty, and probably the cause of many sibling arguments over who got the bigger one. And then there was chocolate, served as a bitter, frothy drink spiced with chili, the ancient equivalent of an energy drink that also doubled as a luxury item. Nobles sipped it like it was fine wine, while commoners dreamed of the day they could afford a cup. Meals weren't just about eating. They were social events, with families gathered around the fire, sharing food, stories, and laughter. From the humble tortilla to the noble cup of chocolate, Maya food culture was proof that good meals could keep both stomachs and spirits full. And honestly, who wouldn't trade a gold coin for a hot tamale on a rainy day? If you think fashion shows are modern inventions, the Maya would like to laugh politely. Their daily lives were filled with color and style, turning every plaza into a catwalk. Men wore cotton tunics and capes, while women dazzled in huipils embroidered with bold patterns, proving that geometry wasn't just for math class. Jewelry was everywhere: jade beads, shell necklaces, and obsidian ear spools, so big they probably caught radio signals from the gods. Beauty rituals went beyond clothes. Parents lovingly shaped their babies' skulls into elegant slopes and gave them slightly crossed eyes because that was considered chic. Imagine kids growing up with parents saying, "Sweetie, hold still. I'm fixing your forehead." Nobles pushed fashion to extremes, with headdresses taller than the wearer, making doorways a daily struggle. Meanwhile, farmers and artisans kept things practical, but still colorful. Because why not? For the Maya, dressing up wasn't vanity. It was identity, spirituality, and a bit of competitive flair. Every outfit whispered to the world, "Yes, I can farm corn, but look fabulous while doing it." When it came to entertainment, the Maya weren't content with simple board games. They invented Pak-to-Pak, a ball game so intense it made soccer look like a picnic. Players had to keep a heavy rubber ball in motion. But here's the twist. No hands, no feet, just hips, elbows, and knees. Imagine the training sessions. No, don't kick it. Use your hip like you mean it. The courts were massive stone arenas where crowds cheered wildly, turning every match into a mix of sport, ritual, and community drama. For nobles, games were sometimes tied to religious ceremonies, with outcomes carrying cosmic importance. For villagers, it was pure entertainment, complete with bets, bragging rights, and maybe a little trash talk. And when they weren't watching Pak-to-Pak, the Maya loved music. Flutes, drums, rattles, and shell trumpets filled the air during festivals, making every street feel like a parade. Together, the game and the music created a culture where joy and ritual danced hand in hand. Whether sweating on the court or swaying to drum beats, the Maya proved they knew how to mix sacred duty with having a good time. Before emojis ruled our phones, the Maya were already masters of turning pictures into words. Their hieroglyphic writing system looked like a mix between an art gallery and a puzzle, with hundreds of signs representing sounds, objects, and entire ideas. Imagine trying to write a shopping list where every item is a mini drawing. Corn, beans, squash suddenly becomes a mural. Scribes carved and painted these glyphs onto stone, codices, and pottery, making sure that history, myths, and royal bragging rights were preserved for eternity. Of course, centuries later, modern scholars had to play the ultimate decoding game, squinting at glyphs and debating whether one symbol meant king, jaguar, or maybe just "don't touch this pot." For a long time, the writing seemed like an unbreakable code, until breakthroughs in the 20th century revealed that Maya glyphs combined phonetic sounds with imagery. Suddenly, their words came alive again. Stories of gods, dynasties, and even everyday jokes resurfaced after being silent for centuries. The Maya proved that long before memes, humanity already loved turning pictures into stories, one glyph at a time. In the grand theater of Maya society, scribes were the unsung rock stars, part historians, part storytellers, part magicians with quills. Sitting with their bark paper codices or chiseling into stone, they transformed royal gossip, epic myths, and cosmic calculations into elegant hieroglyphs. Picture a king strutting into battle, then picture the scribe writing it down as, "His Majesty totally crushed it today." These scribes didn't just record facts, they shaped legacy, deciding which victories were remembered and which embarrassing losses quietly vanished. Nobles relied on them like modern politicians rely on speechwriters, because every glyph was both propaganda and poetry. Their desks weren't quiet offices. They worked under the gaze of priests, rulers, and curious villagers, all waiting to see what story would be carved into eternity. And while they looked serious, you can almost imagine a sly grin when they added extra flair to a king's triumph. For the Maya, scribes weren't background extras. They were the keepers of memory, ensuring that when future generations looked back, history read like an epic saga instead of a boring grocery list. Long before modern astronomers built giant telescopes, the Maya were already sky geeks with a knack for precision. Using nothing more than their eyes, observatories, and some serious patience, they tracked the movements of the sun, moon, and planets so accurately that they could predict solar eclipses centuries in advance. Imagine a priest announcing, "Don't panic, the sun will disappear at exactly noon. And yes, I planned this." Their calculations were so sharp that modern scientists still marvel at how close they came to today's astronomical numbers. They use this cosmic data not only for farming, but also to decide when to throw big festivals, or, as we might call it, divine party planning. For them, the heavens were a giant cosmic clock, ticking away in patterns that only the most dedicated stargazers could decode. And while today we rely on apps to tell us when the next eclipse happens, the Maya had something better, an entire civilization of sky watchers who treated astronomy like both science and theater. The result? A blend of math, faith, and showmanship that made the cosmos feel like a neighborhood performance. If you think keeping track of one calendar is tough, the Maya had three, and they managed to juggle them without missing a birthday. First came the Hab, a solar calendar with 365 days, perfect for farming and knowing when to harvest corn without guessing. Then there was the Solkan, a 260-day sacred calendar that priests used for rituals, naming babies, and probably deciding the cosmic equivalent of a lucky lottery number. Finally, the Long Count, a grand timeline that stretched across centuries, making our New Year's resolutions look embarrassingly short-term. Together, these calendars worked like a cosmic Rubik's Cube, interlocking cycles of days, months, and eras. Scribes and priests tracked them with impressive precision, announcing, "Good news, today is auspicious for planting beans, but terrible for haircut appointments." When the long count reset, it wasn't the end of the world, sorry, 2012 memes, but rather the start of a new cycle, like hitting refresh on the universe. The Maya proved that time wasn't just a straight line. It was a dance of numbers, rituals, and cosmic choreography. For the Maya, brains and bricks went hand in hand. Their knowledge wasn't just written in books, but carved into entire cities. Take their math. They invented the concept of zero centuries before much of the world, proving they were ahead of the game while the rest of humanity was still counting on fingers. With this mathematical genius, they designed cities with jaw-dropping symmetry, pyramids aligned to the stars, and ball courts echoing cosmic order. Imagine a builder saying, "Don't worry, the angles line up with Venus, so the gods will totally approve." Their architectural skills weren't just practical, they were statements of power and intellect. Bridges, plazas, and temples showed off geometry so precise it would make modern engineers double-check their calculators. And the best part? They did it all without metal tools or wheels, just sheer ingenuity and teamwork. From the smallest glyph to the tallest pyramid, the Maya proved that knowledge could be both functional and beautiful. Their legacy is a reminder that science and art don't just coexist. They throw one spectacular party together. The Maya army wasn't some ragtag bunch of farmers with sticks. It was a disciplined force with style, strategy, and plenty of feathers. Soldiers wore colorful, padded armor, animal headdresses, and carried wooden clubs studded with obsidian blades sharp enough to make even modern knives jealous. Imagine facing a warrior who looks half man, half jaguar, and fully ready to ruin your day. Their armies were organized into ranks, with nobles leading the charge like flashy captains, while commoners filled the ranks as foot soldiers. Strategy mattered. Ambushes in the jungle, sieges of rival cities, and psychological warfare with terrifying war cries. But here's the twist. Victory wasn't always about killing. Capturing enemies alive was often more important than defeating them outright, since those captives made for primetime ritual sacrifices back home. So the battlefield was half combat, half recruitment drive for the gods. Between the feathered uniforms, obsidian weaponry, and dramatic tactics, the Maya turned war into both a deadly game and a sacred duty. And let's be honest, nothing says intimidation like a soldier screaming while dressed as a jaguar with an axe made of volcanic glass. If the Maya world had a rivalry as dramatic as a sports final, it was Tikal versus Calakmul. These two superpowers of the jungle fought so often that historians joke they needed season tickets for their wars. Tikal, with its towering pyramids and ambition bigger than its plazas, clashed repeatedly with Calakmul, the cunning neighbor that always seemed to have an extra alliance up its sleeve. Battles weren't just about territory, they were about prestige, because nothing says, "I'm the boss," like dragging home rival nobles in chains. Imagine warriors storming temples while scribes stood nearby, already drafting the victory inscriptions. Today, we totally owned Calakmul again. Of course, the back and forth was intense. Sometimes Tikal won, sometimes Calakmul struck back, making the rivalry feel like an endless chess match played with actual human lives. Alliances shifted like sand, with smaller cities picking sides and then regretting it later. For the Maya, these wars weren't only about survival, they were about theater, pride, and cosmic bragging rights. In short, Tikal versus Calakmul was less once upon a time and more to be continued. For the Maya, going to war wasn't just about land or power, it was about impressing the gods and giving the king bragging rights. Captives weren't taken just to fill prisons. They were paraded back home like living trophies, destined for ritual sacrifice. Picture a king boasting, "See this guy? He used to be a prince. Now he's a VIP guest for the altar." The more prestigious the captive, the more cosmic points the ruler scored, turning victories into divine endorsements. Battles often ended with grand ceremonies where drums thundered, incense smoke curled, and the unlucky prisoners realized they were about to become the highlight of the show. And for the people watching, it was half religious duty, half terrifying theater, a mix of devotion and spectacle. To the Maya, blood wasn't just life, it was sacred fuel to keep the universe running, like oil for the cosmic engine. So when kings led their armies, they weren't just generals. They were producers of the ultimate ritual drama, with the battlefield as the stage and the gods as the audience. Not every Maya encounter ended with obsidian blades. Sometimes it ended with cacao beans and obsidian mirrors being swapped across borders. Trade with Teotihuacan and other civilizations turned bustling markets into international conferences, only with more feathers and fewer PowerPoints. Imagine a Maya merchant haggling over jade while his Teotihuacan counterpart insists on adding in a few exotic bird feathers as a bonus deal. These exchanges weren't just about stuff, they were about prestige, politics, and showing off. A king who secured obsidian imports could boast of stronger weapons, while another who brought in colorful Quetzal plumes could strut around looking like the galaxy's best-dressed ruler. And let's not forget cacao, the bean that doubled as both currency and a hot chocolate starter pack. Diplomacy often looked more like a giant marketplace, where alliances were sealed with gifts instead of signatures. In short, trade wasn't simply business. It was how the Maya told the world, "We've got style, we've got connections, and yes, our chocolate is better than yours." For the Maya, not every conflict was settled with obsidian clubs. Sometimes it was solved with wedding bells. Well, the ancient equivalent. Political marriages were the ultimate peace treaties, where kings offered their daughters as living alliances. Picture a grand ceremony, nobles in feathered robes smile stiffly while the bride thinks, "Great, I'm now the treaty." These unions weren't just about romance. Spoiler, there often wasn't much. They were about securing trade routes, ensuring allies, and making sure the neighbors didn't show up with armies next week. A royal wedding could unite two powerful cities, or at least delay their inevitable squabble for a few decades. Gifts flowed, feasts were held, and everyone cheered, though some probably muttered, "Let's see how long this lasts." In the end, marriage diplomacy was a gamble. Sometimes it created golden ages of cooperation, other times it just gave kings new in-laws to argue with. Either way, the Maya turned marriage into a political chess move, proving that love may be blind, but diplomacy always keeps one eye open. The classic period of the Maya, 250–900 CE, was like their golden age mixtape, packed with all the hits. Cities like Tikal, Palenque, and Copan weren't just settlements. They were mega centers bursting with temples, places, and the kind of pyramids that made neighbors jealous. Imagine walking through Tikal at its peak, scribes scribbling, merchants bargaining over cacao beans, warriors strutting in feathered armor, and priests timing rituals with the precision of cosmic DJs. Populations soared into the tens of thousands, making these cities feel like the New Yorks of the jungle. And of course, kings competed for the biggest and flashiest monuments. Because what's power if you don't have a pyramid taller than your rivals? Art, science, and politics flourished together, turning every corner into a blend of sacred duty and competitive flexing. It was a time when the Maya seemed unstoppable, their culture radiating brilliance across Central America. Looking back, it was less just another century and more the blockbuster era of Maya civilization. If the classic period was the Maya Golden Age, then art was its sparkling jewelry. The Maya weren't just builders of stone, they were artists with flair. Their sculptures captured kings looking both mighty and slightly smug, while gods appeared with the kind of dramatic poses you'd expect from comic book heroes. Murals burst with vibrant colors, showing daily life, battles, and ceremonies, making walls the ancient equivalent of Instagram feeds. Pottery wasn't just for drinking chocolate. It was a canvas of swirling glyphs and witty designs, sometimes depicting nobles mid-feast as if caught in candid shots. Every piece had layers of meaning, where a carving of a jaguar wasn't just a cat, it was a cosmic metaphor with teeth. And the detail. Craftsmen carved obsidian with precision, sharp enough to make you nervous. For the Maya, art wasn't decoration. It was propaganda, storytelling, and a spiritual hotline to the gods. It was beautiful, powerful, and occasionally just a little bit over the top. Exactly how a civilization at its peak should be remembered. The Maya weren't just warriors and architects. They were also the neighborhood doctors with an impressive herbal pharmacy. Forget modern pills. The Maya could cure headaches with tree bark, soothe stomach aches with cacao, and even patch wounds with crushed leaves that doubled as natural band-aids. Their healers, part scientists and part shamans, carried knowledge that blended observation with ritual. Imagine one examining a patient while also muttering prayers to keep pesky underworld spirits from interfering. Some remedies sound familiar today. Aloe for burns, honey for infections, chili peppers for stimulating circulation. Others, let's just say they were a bit more experimental, like using hallucinogenic plants to diagnose illnesses, because nothing says accurate diagnosis like seeing visions of talking jaguars. But jokes aside, the Maya medical tradition was centuries ahead, combining practical botany with spiritual belief. Their approach wasn't just about curing bodies, it was about keeping balance between humans, nature, and the gods. In a way, every healer was both a pharmacist and a cosmic negotiator, armed with herbs, chants, and maybe a sprinkle of chili powder. In the Maya Golden Age, society was organized like a very strict party guest list. At the top sat kings and queens, enjoying feathered thrones and cocoa drinks thick enough to require a spoon. Nobles strutted around like influencers, showing off jade jewelry and fancy headdresses. Priests, meanwhile, managed both the calendar and everyone's spiritual well-being. Imagine an astrologer mixed with a life coach. Below them, scribes were the intellectual rock stars, writing down history with glyphs that only the elite could read, making them the keepers of civilization's gossip. Education was mostly a noble privilege, where young lords learned math, astronomy, and, of course, how to look serious while wearing feathers. Commoners weren't excluded entirely. They farmed, crafted, and played the ball game that doubled as sports and sometimes auditions for the afterlife. The hierarchy was strict, but it gave the Maya a rhythm. Every class had its role, and together they built a society that was both orderly and fabulously theatrical. Think less every man equal and more every man knows his costume for the cosmic play. The brilliance of Maya culture didn't stay locked in the jungle. It spread across Central America like the ancient version of a viral trend. Their calendar system impressed neighbors, their glyphs inspired other scripts, and their architecture influenced cities far beyond Maya lands. Picture a visiting diplomat from another civilization walking into Chichen Itza, jaw dropping like someone stepping into Times Square for the first time. Trade routes carried not just cacao and jade, but also ideas, stories, and rituals. Soon, elements of Maya religion and style popped up across Mesoamerica, like cultural cameos. Even centuries later, Spanish conquistadors were stunned to find Maya knowledge woven into the lives of surrounding peoples. It was as if the Maya had left behind a cultural Wi-Fi signal, strong, stylish, and impossible to ignore. Their golden age wasn't just about being brilliant at home, it was about exporting that brilliance everywhere. And honestly, who wouldn't want to copy the civilization that managed to combine chocolate, pyramids, and cosmic math into one dazzling package? As glorious as Maya cities were, even the grandest pyramids couldn't stop royal family drama. Internal crises erupted like soap operas on fast forward. Kings fought with their brothers, nobles plotted in secret, and sometimes entire cities split into rival camps faster than you could say, "Who gets the jade crown?" Coups and uprisings became so common that a visitor might wonder if the palace had revolving doors. Citizens, once impressed by divine rulers, started doubting whether these feathered kings were gods or just very expensive troublemakers. Armies marched not only against enemies outside but also against neighbors and even former allies inside the city walls. The result? Endless chaos, with leaders too busy arguing over who got to sit on the fanciest throne to notice the empire slowly wobbling. Internal conflict didn't just weaken the Maya politically, it drained their resources, split their loyalty, and gave their rivals plenty of reasons to laugh. In short, the mighty empire began tripping over its own sandals, proving that sometimes the biggest threat isn't outside the walls, but sitting right on the throne. As if palace drama wasn't enough, nature decided to pile on. The Maya faced climate change in the form of long, stubborn droughts, like the sky just canceled the rainy season subscription. Rivers shrank, crops withered, and farmers stared at their parched maize fields with expressions that said, "Really? Again?" Without steady rains, the famous maize-based diet turned into a maize-based crisis. Granaries emptied faster than gossip spread at the marketplace, and communities began to struggle with famine. Priests tried every ritual in the book, offering sacrifices and chanting under a blazing sun, but the clouds stubbornly refused to show up. Agriculture, once the foundation of Maya power, now crumbled like stale tortillas. Families abandoned fields, traders lost business, and kings who were supposed to control the heavens lost credibility as fast as the rivers dried up. Nature's prank was merciless. What had once been fertile lands became dust bowls. In short, the mighty Maya found themselves in a battle they couldn't win, against the weather forecast. As droughts dragged on and political squabbles drained energy, another issue loomed large. Way too many people and not enough stuff. The Maya heartland was bursting at the seams, with cities packed tighter than a festival market. Farms stretched to their limits, forests were chopped down faster than they could grow back, and game animals started disappearing like they'd heard the dinner bell one too many times. Commoners carried water jars and firewood with increasingly tired faces, while nobles demanded more tribute as if resources were infinite. Soon, shortages hit everything from food to firewood to fertile soil. Farmers had to work harder for smaller harvests, and traders struggled to find goods worth swapping. It was as if the land itself had maxed out its credit card, and the bill had finally come due. Overpopulation turned the empire into a pressure cooker. Hungry mouths, shrinking fields, and fewer resources sparked unrest that even the grandest pyramids couldn't hide. The Maya weren't defeated by laziness. They were simply outnumbered by their own success. As if infighting, drought, and overpopulation weren't already enough, the Maya had to deal with a final headache: invasions and outside influences. Neighboring groups, smelling weakness like jaguars sniffing dinner, swooped in to raid cities and claim territory. Foreign merchants arrived with shiny goods but also tricky politics, making alliances that turned into betrayals faster than you could trade a cacao bean. Warriors who once fought glorious city rivalries suddenly had to fend off entirely new enemies at their gates. Some outsiders brought different fighting styles, new weapons, or just a talent for causing chaos. Meanwhile, the constant pressure chipped away at already struggling cities, leaving kings scrambling to hold on to crumbling power. It wasn't just spears and arrows. It was the slow erosion of independence, as outside cultures seeped into Maya life, changing trade, religion, and politics. In the end, foreign pressure was like the final push on a teetering pyramid. It didn't build the collapse, but it sure gave it one last decisive shove. By the 9th and 10th centuries, many great Maya cities had begun to look more like ghost towns than bustling centers of power. Streets once filled with merchants and chatter now echoed with the sound of crickets, while abandoned plazas collected dust instead of crowds. Massive pyramids stood awkwardly like oversized furniture. No one had the energy to move, their steps covered in weeds. Families quietly packed up, leaving behind homes, temples, and marketplaces, as if they had simply forgotten to come back after lunch. Scholars today still debate the exact reasons: droughts, wars, politics, or perhaps a cosmic joke played by the gods. But one thing is clear: cities emptied faster than a cacao jar at a party. Kings lost their followers, priests lost their audience, and ball courts lost their players. What was once a vibrant world of rituals and power had thinned into silence. The collapse wasn't a single bang, but a slow fade, a gradual ghosting of entire cities by their own people. Even though the grand cities of the Maya eventually faded, their architectural spirit never really retired. Look around today, and you'll spot echoes of Maya genius popping up in surprising places. Those pyramid-like steps, you can see their influence in modern stadiums and even some government buildings that look like they're one feathered headdress away from hosting a sacrifice ceremony. Architects worldwide studied the Maya knack for blending beauty with cosmic precision, especially their obsession with aligning temples to the stars. It's like ancient city planning had a secret GPS, only instead of satellites, it was powered by constellations. Even skyscrapers with sleek glass designs sometimes borrow the imposing geometry of Maya pyramids, just with fewer jaguars and more elevators. Their stone-carved aesthetics, massive plazas, and layered terraces set the stage for how humanity builds lasting monuments. The Maya may not have invented steel or concrete, but their sense of balance, symmetry, and dramatic flair still inspires builders who want their work to stand tall and preferably not crumble before the next millennium. The Maya may have left their grand cities behind, but their language and culture are far from extinct. Today, millions of people across Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize still speak Maya languages, proving that the tongue of the ancients has better survival skills than most reality TV stars. In villages, grandmothers tell bedtime stories that sound like epic sagas, while kids roll their eyes but secretly memorize every word. Traditional clothing, vibrant with woven patterns, turns everyday markets into fashion runways that Paris could only dream of. Festivals continue to pulse with music, dance, and rituals that would make even the most serious historian want to join the conga line. And let's not forget food. The beloved tamales and chocolate drinks aren't just snacks. They're edible time machines linking modern families to their ancestors. Despite centuries of colonization and cultural pressure, the Maya world refuses to vanish. It simply adapts, blending the old with the new, reminding us that heritage can be both ancient and very much alive. If Indiana Jones had a frequent flyer card, the Maya world would have maxed it out ages ago. Archaeologists continue to uncover temples, pyramids, and mysterious glyphs that turn textbooks upside down and make museums rearrange their shelves every few years. One day, a team finds a jade mask buried under centuries of soil, and the next, someone deciphers a glyph that reveals the gossip of ancient kings. Proof that even rulers couldn't resist bragging. The ruins of cities like Palenque and Tikal are not just piles of stone, they're giant history books written in limestone and stucco. And thanks to modern technology, like LiDAR scans, whole hidden cities have popped up on screens, shocking experts and delighting tourists who suddenly realize their vacation destination is basically an open-air library. Every artifact, from painted pottery to scratched codices, is like a punchline delivered late but still hilarious. The Maya left us clues everywhere, daring us to connect the dots. And the best part? We're still not done discovering. From Hollywood blockbusters to indie novels, the Maya have become cultural guest stars that never seem to leave the stage. Think about it. One moment, a pyramid appears in an action movie, glowing ominously while the hero runs for his life. The next, a Maya calendar is used as a plot twist to predict the end of the world. Even children's cartoons sneak in feathered serpents and jungle ball games, making kids giggle while learning a little history. Writers borrow Maya myths like they're at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Xibalba pops up as the ultimate underworld villain, while Kukulkan slithers onto comic book pages looking way cooler than any dragon. Modern artists, too, play with Maya motifs. Geometric patterns inspire fashion designers, and sculptors reimagine stelae with neon lights. The playful irony is that the Maya, once feared warriors and cosmic thinkers, are now part-time celebrities in pop culture. Their legacy, repackaged with popcorn and popcorn logic, proves one thing. Immortality sometimes wears 3D glasses. And so the Maya leave us not only ruins and glyphs, but also a cosmic wink that says, survive this long, and you too can trend forever. Their story is less about collapse and more about resilience, because despite droughts, wars, and colonizers with questionable fashion choices, their ideas still pulse through our world. From the way we build, to the foods we eat, to the myths that creep into our movies, the Maya whisper across centuries, creativity is immortality. Their civilization may have stumbled, but their spirit found a way to sneak into the modern era, disguised as chocolate bars, star charts, and pop culture cameos. The playful lesson is clear. You don't need to last forever if your influence keeps respawning like the world's most stubborn video game character. The Maya remind us that civilizations don't just vanish, they evolve, adapt, and sometimes photobomb the future. In short, their immortal gift is proof that brilliance never really retires. It just changes outfits.